Professor Ina Vachena, of Vice Dean, Teaching and Learning in our Faculty of Science. Professor Nomngongo, our inductee this evening. Professor Richard Mutwali, our respondent, who's a full professor of membrane science and technology at UNISA. Senior leaders of the university, members of Senate and other academics, our online audience on Facebook and YouTube, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, Sanbonani, Huyenand, good evening, Tobela. It is indeed a great honor and special privilege for me to welcome you to the Professorial Inaugural Lecture of Philiswa Nomngongo. As I do so, I wish to express a warm welcome to her loved ones, special guests, and her colleagues. This is indeed a proud and joyful, yet a landmark moment for all of you, for Philiswa, and of course, for us here at UJ, higher education in South Africa and beyond. The inauguration of professors is a public ceremony in which newly appointed professors are inducted into the office by the Vice-Chancellor functionary and deliver their inaugural addresses. The ceremony has its roots in the medieval university and serves multiple purposes. Firstly, it is an expression of welcome and an entry for new professors joining the circle of colleagues who are already professors. Secondly, it provides a platform for professors to display their expertise in the discipline and showcase their research. Traditionally, in isiXhosa, we say ukuthweswa isidanga kwisigaba sobunjingalwazi. This, loosely translated, refers to assuming the role of professors. Of course, in colonial traditions subscribed to by universities, this refers to the gown and the cap. The wise one would accept a blanket, ingubo, ngesiXhosa. Once we have listened to the inaugural address, the gown or ingubo, denoting the professorship, will be formally assumed. We gather to bear witness to the entry of Professor Philiswa Nomngongo to the illustrious community of scholars at the university. It is a celebration of the contributions to the discipline and ultimately the impact on society. Professors provide a university with its identity, character, academic integrity, and legitimacy. The inaugural lecture is a rite of passage following the confirmation of the appointment of the person as a professor. This evening, ladies and gentlemen, we will listen to Professor Nomngongo as the gown goes to town. By this, I mean that the power of the inaugural address is when the expertise is showcased beyond the corridors of the university and reverberates with society. It stands out as a moment of pride for the incumbent, the family, fellow scholars, the university, and ultimately society. For the German philosopher and diplomat Humboldt referred to the university as a whole community of scholars and students engaged in a common search for the truth. Newman talked about teaching universal knowledge. And recently, universities have been viewed as instrumentalists serving the purpose of the economy or utilitarian in purpose. I would hope that we can break out of these narrow conceptualizations and reflect on the university as contributing to the public good. Edward Said, in an article on defiance and taking positions, offers a formulation on the ideal role of the true intellectual as, open quotes, one who commands a vast knowledge of the person's discipline, who is rigorous in the analysis of literature, who views being an intellectual as a vocation, the intellectual who considers it necessary to step into the public sphere and to speak truth to power, namely to question, interpret, and understand authority rather than consolidating it, to step out of the boundaries of the academy, to connect oneself, to affiliate oneself, to align oneself with an ongoing process or contest of some sort perhaps with the aim of improving the lot of the oppressed. The intellectual who functions as a kind of public memory to recall what is forgotten or ignored, to make the connections that are otherwise hidden, and to provide alternatives to mistaken policies, close quote. It remains then for us as a university with a Pan-African vision to derive our mandate as intellectuals and as professors. How do we embrace the role of a professor as a disruptor while continuing to be flagship carriers of our discipline? This evening, ladies and gentlemen, we will listen to Professor Nomngongo as one further step in the journey of being a professor. This is a journey which does not culminate once the lecture has been given. It is a self-reflective pause in the journey of the professor, with a promise of more to enrich our minds and simultaneously contributing to the rich intellectual body of work in the discipline. Now, please allow me to invite our Vice Dean Teaching and Learning, Professor Ndlovu, to introduce Professor Nomngongo. I thank you. Ngiyaleboga, ngiyabonga, bayadangi.
Thank you, Ms. Mamorari, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is my pleasure to introduce Professor Nomngongo. Prof Philiswa Nomngongo was born and raised in Flagstaff, Eastern Cape in South Africa in 1984. After completing her matric in Jikandaba Secondary School, she completed her BSc in Applied Chemistry 2008, a BSc Honours in Chemistry in 2009, and an MSc in Chemistry 2011 at the University of KwaZulu-Natal. This was followed by a PhD in Chemistry, specializing in Analytical Chemistry in 2014 at the University of Johannesburg. In 2014, she served as a postdoctoral research fellow at the University of Johannesburg. In 2015, Prof Nomngongo joined UJ as a lecturer and was promoted as an associate and full professor in 2017 and 2020, respectively. Prof Nomngongo is a Tier 1 DST NRF South African Research Chair in Nanotechnology for Water with a NRF Y1 rating. Her scientific career has been dedicated to environmental chemistry in nanotechnology, aiming in solving different environmental problems in the field of water quality and environmental protection. Her most important contributions have been particularly in the development of sample preparation methodologies, using nanostructured materials as an adsorbent for monitoring of inorganic, toxic trace metals in metalloids, and organic pollutants, more specifically emerging pollutants which include pesticides, endocrine disruptors, and personal care and pharmaceutical products in water systems. Prof Nomngongo's current research includes the application of various nanomaterial materials in fields that are attracting increased interest, such as a wastewater treatment, groundwater remediation, water quality monitoring, developing of water quality sensors, treatment, and the recovery of precious metals, amongst others. Her research achievements have been recognized through prestigious fellowships and awards. The L'Oreal UNESCO Sub-Saharan Women in Science Regional Fellowship in 2014, the South African Women in Science Award in the Distinguished Young Women Research in the Natural and Engineering Science category in 2017, and the Vice-Chancellor's Distinguished Award, Most Promising Young Researcher of the Year in 2017. Her other recognitions include African Academy of Science Affiliate, the South African Women in Leadership's Award winner, the top 10, the 2019-2020 NSTF South African 23 Award finalist in the category TW Kambule emerging researcher and engineering research capacity development, and Mail and Guardian 200 Young South Africans. During his 6 years at the University of Johannesburg, that is 2015 until present, Prof Nomngongo has supervised and co-supervised 28 MSc and 13 PhD students. She's currently the supervisor or co-supervisor of a number of MSc and PhD students. She's the author or co-author of 103 peer-reviewed publications, 7 book chapters, 2 peer-reviewed conference proceedings, and has presented more than 50 keynote and invited contributions as scientific conferences. A Google Scholar, Scopus and Web of Science H-index are 22, 19 and 19 respectively. It is now my pleasure to introduce to you Professor Nomngongo.
To my family, friends, colleagues, students, and the audience online, good evening. In this evening, I'd like to introduce my journey to you and where it started and where it's going. And my journey has been along in nanotechnology and environmental analytical chemistry. Now, one thing that we would need to understand is how do the two come together? How did we manage to make them to come together to solve the environmental issues? First of all, one thing that we have noticed, even if as a community, is that when we work together, we actually come with solutions. This same applies when it comes to academic, when it comes to research. When different disciplines, different subjects come together, they come with a solution. So the picture here depicts one thing that we can call it a multidisciplinary, a inter, or a cross-disciplinary, depending on how you would like to define it. And how does this work? It works in this way that when you mix different fields, they solve a major challenge that we have, because one person cannot solve many problems that we have. And then also, one thing that helps a lot in terms of dealing with challenges that we might have in the research sphere is that the collaboration between the subjects, it helps in getting a solution to the problems. And also, as I mentioned, if we know that our traditional subject, we know our traditional fields, but there is that they cannot solve that particular problem. So there is it's not very distinct to use one subject. And then with that introduction, then it helps us to understand how do we then come up with a field called environmental analytical chemistry. This is because analytical chemistry and environmental chemistry, they always go together, they are related, they are interlinked, and we cannot be able to separate them. Then that's why it makes sense to have something called environmental analytical chemistry. Just to illustrate, how does it come together? How does it give us the solutions? Now, the picture here gives us a very complex subject called analytical chemistry, which involves problem. You need to know what is the problem. And in my case, and my research group, the problem is always what pollutants do we have in water. And for us to be able to tell those particular pollutants that are in water, we need to do so much. And you can see the picture, it shows how they are interlinked. And then once we then have something called an analytical method. What does the analytical method help us to do? It helps us to solve the environmental issues. It helps us to be able to investigate whether there is an issue or there is no issue. And then for that matter, what happened is that the more we advanced in analytical chemistry, we see the advancement in environmental chemistry. And then when we get more understanding of what is happening in the environment, we end up improving in the analytical chemistry field. And one who is an analytical chemist, maybe listening or in the room, will understand that. In 1990, the instrument that were being used, they were not capable of telling all the pollutants that are in water. But today there is a lot of improvement in terms of the instrumentation. How does that happen? It's because the more the pollutants we are discovered in the environment, the more we need to advance in terms of the methods that we are developing. Therefore, combining these two, you will get the analytical environmental chemistry. And then, how does then nanotechnology come in this particular field? Is that when we look at the complex picture for the analytical chemistry that we had, is that you will see there are so many things that are interlinked, and those things, they can be broken into three subsections, which is a sample collection. I need to know where to sample my water. I need to prepare the sample so that it can fit to the instrument, and then I need to know how much is there. Once I know how much is there, then I can be able to have the results. I can give them to the policymakers. I can give them to the environmental protection agencies. You can publish them once you know those. But now, what happened is that nanotechnology then help us to be able to shorten those steps that we have into smaller steps. For instance, it helps us to deal with the sampling. Imagine every day going to go to the river and get the sample, and only to find that there is nothing, there is no pollutant, the water is clean. So what happened? Nanotechnology help us to design devices that can help us into sampling, called samplers. Samplers you can just put in the river and then take it and go to the lab and analyze, as opposed to getting 50 liters of water from the river. And also you can have sensors, chemical sensors can tell you there is arsenic, there is lead, there is antibiotics, depending on how you make them. So what is the advantage of using nanotechnology in environmental and analytical chemistry is that it reduces the amount of work that we would have if we were to use our traditional ways of doing things. And also, then my main focus is always on sample preparation. One will ask why. Once everything goes wrong on the sample preparation, it means the results that we are going to get are not the representative of what is happening in the environment. So our focus is on the cleanup method, extraction method, that then allows us to be able to detect the very small amount of pollutants in water. And then when we move from now having a sample preparation, you have a correct one, you have collected, you have developed a nice one, but you still have a very old instrument in the lab. Then you can actually use nanotechnology to design the detection methods. You can be able to, if it's a chromatography, you can design your own column that will speak to your problem. And that's how then, in my group, we managed to combine the nanotechnology and the environmental analytical chemistry. Now, here it shows what is my interest. My interest is on a sample preparation. We develop methods, and once we know, we then apply nanotechnology for environmental remediation. We also look into developing sensors for water quality. Now, the next thing that we need to know, we have the background, we understand. Where did my journey start and our journey? When I mean my journey as Philiswa and our journey as my students, all of us working together. It doesn't start with a PhD. Where did me becoming analytical chemistry start from? It started when I was a third year. We were given projects, the third year projects, and there were a wide range of projects. But there was one project that really I liked because I'm very curious. there was a project that was supposed to look at plasticizers called something chemical, in chemical terms, we're looking at phthalates in a toys. Not the toys that we give our children to play with, they are soft. Now there's that chemical that is soft is very dangerous in the environment, and it's also dangerous to humans. So now my project was there. And my interests were not necessarily anything else. I did not know there is that nice toy has such a toxic chemical. So I decided to choose the project. Yes, I was not really an analytical chemist, but I was aspiring to be an analytical chemist. For 4 months, there was no results, but I was enjoying going to the lab, getting to the instrument. And where was the problem? The problem was how I prepared the sample. So I saw nothing for 4 months until I went back again and talked to the supervisor and said, you need to check on how you are doing the things. Then I moved on that because 6 months is very short. The owners are like, okay, I think I still need to go and check if I can be able to detect this chemical, because now this chemical is of interest to me. Unfortunately, the project was not available for honors. So that's one thing that kept me moving, because I really wanted to go back to that toy and check, can I see the particular chemical that I'm looking for? But even today, I haven't went back to my third-year project. And for masters, I developed sensors for metals in water. Then for PhD, things changed, because for PhD, I was sponsored by Sasol. So Sasol is not water, Sasol is petrol. So what I did there, I had to develop methods on looking at the quality of petrol that Sasol produce. And one thing that makes the petrol not to be of good quality is metals. Metals damages your engine. So now they need to make sure that the metals, if they are there at all, they are in a very small amount, in a small concentration. So now that was my journey, a very interesting journey, because people that I was working with in the lab, they were not spending time with me because petrol can smell a lot. But what I've done there, I managed to apply nanotechnology, because I was working in a big group. So one of our group member was developing nanomaterials. And I was interested in testing his nanomaterials, if it can be able to extract metals from petrol, and I'll be able to detect. Then that was carbon nanofibers that we prepared. And then we also prepared cellulose nanofibers. Then we tested, and the work was published in 2013. And then the next thing, because now I've learned the trick from others, then I started to read more about nanotechnology. From that point, I managed to make a material called alumina. Alumina is natural occurring, but you can make it in the lab. Then alumina allowed me to be very innovative, making a type of a sample preparation that will not allow me to be in the lab, because petrol smells. So it can a little bit operate itself. But from there, we managed also to publish the work. Then the last one that I've done, that was then published in 2015, that was my last work for PhD. It's when I combined alumina and titanium to make an adsorbent that can be able to extract metal. So what did I get from what I was doing? I managed to compare the different type of petrols that are sold in South Africa, and see the metal content, of which it shows that in some cases, depending on which one you are buying, there are more metals, and others, they don't have metals. Then from there, now that I've done all the other methods during my career as a student. Now from 2015 and onwards, our question was, how can we convert a dirty water from a treatment plant to a very clean, small extract that will be able to tell us exactly what is in the water sample? And how did we achieve this? We achieved this by developing different methods. Now, in this case, we already have an expertise in terms of making a nanoadsorbent, so that we can be able to design our own methods. The method that we designed first was something we call dispersive solid phase extraction that allowed us to be able to quantify metals in drinking water, in wastewater, in river water, and also be able to quantify pharmaceutical and personal care products in our water system. And one will ask why we have to be interested in pharmaceuticals and all these things is that when we, at home, we drink our tablets, and sometimes we don't finish them. The simplest way we want to do is to put them and flush them, and they go to the river system. Now, one thing that we need to understand is that for this world to be like this, there is a balance. So when we kill one, it means there will be no balance, there will be a problem. So it's either, if it doesn't affect you as a human being, it affects Mr. Frog there. And Mr. Frog, he also wants to live. And then we also always think about fish because we eat, but there are other things that fish eat that need to be protected. So now, what we do, we then want to know, after we have treated the water, how much is in the, it's left in the water. Then those methods that we developed, they allowed us to be able to look, to quantify and know the concentration of those. And this work has resulted to 28 publications, and it was done by 13 students, both PhD and master students. And then we further tried to be innovative now, because remember, if you look at the first slides, the previous slides that I presented, is that in analytical chemistry, we need to keep on improving so that we advance in knowing what is in our water. So now we wanted to make an automated system, but we started with something we called an in-syringe type of a sample preparation method. Then from there, we were able to detect parabens in water. What was very interesting is that we were able even to detect in the tap water in the lab. So what does this tell us? It tells us that, yes, they go to the treatment plant, but they are not completely removed. Also, one thing that also told us is that when we look at the spectrum of South Africa, there are two mostly used parabens in our lotions, in our medication that are used as antimicrobials, and others that are used as to make sure that the products that we have, they have a longer shelf life. So those two were detected even in our tap water. So they miss all the treatment stages until they come to the tap water. But I would say don't be afraid, because they were in a lower concentration. But the one thing that will make you more afraid is that, is it constantly happening? Because if it's constantly happening, it means it's going to accumulate and accumulate, and then it may become problematic. So we managed to do that, and this was a very interesting part, because we then went back to the shops at Dis-Chem, because Dis-Chem sells almost everything, and then we go to the look at which are the major projects that, the major products that have these particular parabens. And we realize it's the one that we use almost on a daily basis. Then it makes sense why we would find them in our tap water, because they are daily, every day they're being released to the water system. And we also now recently looked at another type of nanomaterials, which is molecular imprinted polymers. These ones are meant to target a specific pollutant, so that you are able to accurately detect it. And this work, as was done, was one of the master students, and is being accepted in a good journal. Okay, now what does the results tell us? Also, what did the results that we've got help us to do in the lab? They actually help us to be able to differentiate between rural area water and the urban area water pollution. And one will ask me, why would I live, why I would be interested, I'm in Joburg, why am I interested in rural areas? That's where I come from. So I need to know what we drink, is it clean? So what we notice is that when we look at the urban water, The problem is a sewage treatment, is industrial effluents, is improper disposal, is a runoffs from the roads. But in a rural area, that's another different story. In rural area, it's going to be the animal waste, meaning that you will have a lot of microbial microbial pollutants in the water. And then you will have fertilizers because they do agriculture. Also, in cases where we are looking at borehole water, depending on where the pit latrines are, you are able to see that they actually contaminate the drinking water system. Then this is a very typical example that we've picked up. We did some, in collaboration with Inauguration municipality in the Eastern Cape, we managed to sample water in many regions where they use both spring water and borehole water. One would ask why we chose that is because I know for sure that we don't have treatment plants. All that we have is either we have a borehole that was pumped and then take to the community. And we also, I know where I come from, that we go to the spring to get water. So that's why the interest was. So what was interesting is that borehole water, depending on where it is, it will be good for drinking. But the one that is the spring water, because it's unprotected, the community might sharing the water with the animals, then you will see that the water is actually not fit for drinking because it has a lot of microbial pollutants. Then in addition, it also tells us that not every clean water is clean. Because if you look at that particular water, is clear like the water that is in front of me right now. But then the methodologies that we develop in our group helped us to be able to actually speak to the people that we're working with and to be able to understand certain things. And I believe that based on the results that we've got, they will be able to implement certain measures in order to make sure that the water that we give to our people is fit for drinking. Now that we know, what next? Okay, what we did, because we have known all these list of pollutants that are listed on the slide, that they exist in the water depending where you sampled it. So the next thing that we did, we play around with the same nanomaterials to try and remove these pollutants. For instance, we saw that if ever it's close to the agricultural area, there are more chances of getting antibiotics called fluoroquinolones because they are used for the animal. So when you get those water, we try to remove the antibiotics, and then we manage to prepare a very powerful material from a starch mixed with chitosan. These are natural materials. Then we were able to remove the fluoroquinolones. The next one was to develop a method, because now we know there are parabens, can we be able to remove them? And we used a magnetic adsorbent to remove pollutants from water. We also looked at dye removal. We also looked at developing metal organic frameworks to remove metals from acid mine drainage and wastewater. And we also recently joined the group with Professor Motlwadi, where we now coming to the area of membrane for water treatment. And we managed to get one publication for now. And I believe many more will be coming for dye removal. Now, we've done all that. What next? First of all, going to the river, getting all the bottles of water and not getting what you are looking for, it's a cumbersome. So one thing that we want to start doing now is to prepare samplers that will be able to give us, to trap the metals, to trap the pollutants, and be able to take the samplers and go to the lab. That will be easier than having a lot of bottles in the car. And also, we want to develop our own small devices as sample preparation materials that will help us to shorten the time for analysis. Remember, I said when we advance in environmental issues, we need improvement in analytical chemistry. And these routes will help us to improve in the analytical chemistry field. We also now, in a collaboration with mechanical engineering, we managed to develop a sensor for measuring the pH, DO. We also want to do fluoride and chloride. Why are we interested in this? Is because now we know that the water we are looking at, they are not the same. Our needs are not the same. This will be fit for the rural area communities where they can be able to test the water and see if those parameters, we first educate them so that they understand what the numbers mean. When they know the numbers, then they can be able to operate the sensors. We're also now looking into recycling. We are looking at making MOFs from the PET plastics. And then lastly, we want to develop greener methods because we don't want to harm the environment. This will not be possible without UJ and all the other partners that are listed, and also the funding from all the funding institutions. Also, it won't be possible without my family. They've been very supportive. When I have a lot of work, they will all come with me to the lab, to the office. So we work, even if we leave at 12 o'clock, as long as we are all in one office. And I'm really grateful for that. I'm also grateful for my students. They've been willing to work hard. When I think about them, I become very emotional. And I would like to thank you for listening.
Good evening, colleagues. Greetings to Ms. Nolwazi Mamanara, Prof Wagenaar, Professor Nomngongo, family and friends, students. I'd also like to offer my greetings to the people at home as well. If you are proactive and you don't have to wait. You don't have to wait for circumstances. You don't have to wait for anyone to give you anything. You can create your own today and make an impact. You can create your own vision and make it into a reality. These are the ways of Stephen Covey. And of course, they do speak to a lot of people. They speak to all of us. But they also find measure in how certain people within our midst are able to live up to those standards. So you need to be able to create the tomorrow that you want through the way you lead your own research, the way you lead your own life, the way you make networks in society. So when Prof Nomngongo asked me to offer this response, the first question that I asked her was, there are better people to offer this response on your behalf. Because I've known Prof Nomngongo for the past 7 years, and I know a lot of people in her life who, when I sit in their shadows, I shiver. But here I am. But when I look back, I also found that we have got a lot of similarities as well. For one, we went to the same university, different years apart. She worked where I worked, and I found her in UJ. She also worked in one of the fundings that I was part of, the NIC, for the long time. Therefore, I feel proud to be here, but I also feel humbled as well to be part of this journey with Prof Nomngongo. Now, there are certain things that I've learned, of course, by working with her since I came to UJ. She's young. She's very energetic. She works hard. She arrives first before 6 o'clock. She leaves after 9. Probably because she didn't know how to drive very well. She was avoiding traffic. But of course, as she said also, it means it had a lot of things to do with family support as well. One of the things that she also does is not just to work very hard, but she's available to all her students all the time. Now, most of us do not avail ourselves to our students. We are absentee supervisors. She's not one of those. If you go to her office, whether it's 6 o'clock in the morning, 6 in the evening, she will be with some of her students. There they are at the back. They are here to witness, and they can bear witness to that. Dr. Dimpe, you can bear witness to her being available. Lutando, you can do the same. So she is really an inspiration to most of us, even though we always say we do not have time for our students, even though they are our main clients. So one of the things that I've learned from her is just that. Of course, as she has presented today, you have seen that most of her research is focused at solving local challenges. Now, her research has got an outward-looking impact on society. And this is not because the government demands of it. This is not because the university demands of it. This is because of life experiences she has faced. She has given examples of how good or bad the waters from a village is. And most of us can attest to that. Wherever we come from, probably from some village in some hinterlands at the borders of South Africa, towards the ocean or towards Zimbabwe, the water that we drink is the same. Terrible. We grow up with those things. But her research and her vision is to come up with solutions to address those things, which for me is a very good thing. She's also very passionate about developing her communities. She's got interest in making sure that her students get the best exposure, whether in the university, through her networks overseas, and in other universities locally. Her students are well-traveled, so they are better exposed to other challenges, which is really what we really aspire as a society. But this is really about the vision of being a professor. Professors are almost like prophets. They are conscious to society. Their life, they lead, should tell society this is where we want to be. If all of us who goes by the name of professor, we can say this is where we want to see our society thrive. This is not about ourselves, it's more about others. If we lift others, we lift society. If you pull the one below you, you also rise above. And this is really what I've learned. Most of the colleagues, I'm sure she has worked with all the colleagues in the department. She has co-published with most of them. She's co-supervised, which is really part of being a professor. You become part of society, whether it's within the department, within the university, and within the world at large. And I think he has been able to show this. So with all this response, I hope it's a response, but I also hope it's me hitting the drum for her, because I work with her, I've experienced her energy, and I've learned a lot of things, even though she's my junior. I've learned a lot of things from her. She has assisted me with a lot of students who I could not assist. because I did not have the time. But she found time for my students, which I'm grateful for. And I think, Prof, keep it up, be the light in the community, be a guidance to your students, show your colleagues what is possible. Talk is cheap, let the work speak for themselves. With those 3 words, I thank you very much. Thank you and good evening.
Thank you, Professor Mutluali, for that humble and powerful response. I think we can all say we join you in hitting the drums for Professor Nomngongo on the wonderful clear and very impactful lecture that she delivered today, and most importantly, the work that she does. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm now going to once again ask Professor Ndlovu to come up and perform the robing of Professor Nomngongo. Sithi halala mangwanguli. Halala. NgesiXhosa sithi ukwanda kwaliwa ngumthakathi. And on behalf of our Vice Chancellor, the University of Johannesburg at large, congratulations once again. We're proud of you and we wish you the best of everything in your future endeavors in the career. You have made us proud. Congratulations. And ladies and gentlemen, with that, we have now come to the end of our proceedings for this evening. Thank you for joining us tonight. I wish you well and have a lovely and a good evening. Good night.